What up, folks? It's freaking Thursday. We're having the next podcast of the week, and it's going to be awesome. We have Christian from Metalancers coming on. We're going to have a freaking awesome conversation. But before that, before we introduce the man, myth, the legend, Matty, how the hell are you doing, brother?
I'm doing fantastic, man. I told you I started my morning routine back up and running now that I'm down in Florida. And I'm not going to lie, the cardio component is a little bit dicey, but we're getting there, man. We're moving through it. And as a side note, almost wore my Hate Beast shirt today. So kind of glad that, we could be twinning, but, great minds think alike. I at least passed it as I was going through the shirts. But how are you doing, man?
Dude, I'm doing fantastic. I'm feeling good. We got so much in the works. We're finally starting to get recognized. Got approved as a tier 4 rug radio creator. We just got invited to be on Llama versus Council. We're going to help direct and give input into that beautiful ecosystem, and people are loving our content, so I'm feeling really good about it, man. And that is just one vertical. I'm excited about thinking about real estate and how that can build the midlife crisis empire. But enough of that. We got an awesome conversation ahead of us. Before I say hi to Christian, we need to do the formal introduction, because that's the only appropriate way to introduce somebody in this space. And we're going to start off with 3 fun facts. And that is, this dude went to law school. Guess what? My wife's a lawyer. That shit ain't easy. I saw her go through it for 3 years, and it ain't fun. That means that man's got some grit, determination, and he's got a good head on his shoulders. So congrats on that. He did that at Nottingham University. Next, worked in finance, worked for IGN Bank for a while before deciding...
ING.
Sorry.
You're too used to video games with that IGN.
I said IGN.
You did.
Dude, by the way, fantastic website. But worked for ING in the finance sector before deciding about a year ago to go into Web3 full-time, hence has a project. We're talking about a lot of Web3 knowledge. It's going to be great. But before we say hi, we got one more fun fact. And that is, this man has lived in 3 countries. He's lived in the US, the UK, and Romania. Dude, Christian, fantastic intro, a lot of good information. Welcome to the show, brother. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for hosting me. I'm hyped to be here, and I appreciate the awesome introduction. You really made me sound awesome.
Well, you are awesome. Everybody's awesome, man. And I like that you already intertwined some Web3 culture in there using the word hype. So that was fantastic. So this is it, man. We're already here. World famous midlife crisis question. How did you get to the seat you're sitting in today? Please give us Star Wars episode 1, 2, and 3. 1 being your childhood, 2 being your professional career, and then 3 your Web3 journey and beyond. So hit us, man. Let's get to it.
Awesome. So going back to my childhood, I was born and raised in the US in Atlanta, Georgia. Went to school there. It's my home. That's what I call home. And then I moved to Romania due to some family members needing some extra assistance here. My parents wanted to move back. I moved back with them to Romania. And shortly after, I decided to go to university in the United Kingdom for law school. I went to a top 10 university there for law called University of Nottingham. And it was awesome. For 3 years, I was super dedicated, especially in the extracurricular areas. I was the president of the Pro Bono Society, which was a student-led society with like 600 members, where we would do all sorts of things like... For example, one of our projects was focused on rehabilitating incarcerated prisoners. So people that are going to leave prison soon, literally just making guides, 100 pages long, about how to build your CV after being in prison, how to reintegrate in society, stuff like that. Meal runs for the homeless, a bunch of stuff. And it was like 2 years of very intense pro bono work, while also working on my law degree, of course. This entire time I was in Web3 as a participant, but of course, between pro bono and law school, there was never enough time for me to truly dive in as deep as I wished in this area. Mm-hmm. And going back to my childhood, so back in like when Bitcoin faucets were around, I was super young at the time. I had no money. I was like 12 when Bitcoin faucets were around. But I was so convinced that crypto is the future that I was going to my parents telling them, buy Bitcoin, buy Bitcoin. Bitcoin was the only thing around at the time. Like you didn't have Ethereum even. It was just Bitcoin. Mm-hmm. Obviously, they didn't buy it because who takes financial advice from a 12-year-old? But
they should have.
Yeah.
They should have.
Absolutely. I agree. And I remember playing around with Bitcoin faucets. You used to just click on a button and it would airdrop like 5 Bitcoin into your wallet just so you can play around, because it was worth absolutely nothing. And I, of course, have nothing from it left. I didn't even sell it. It was just worthless. Got thrown out on old laptops. But that's the journey.
How many Bitcoin do you think you threw away on those laptops?
At least like 100.
Oh, brother!
But you can't even. I don't even think of it like that. Like it was just playing around with this tech, and it allowed me to enter into this like amazing industry that we're in today.
I'm sure it had no influence whatsoever as you went from law to finance, but it's yeah, you know.
Yeah, but I mean, listen, the same thing we talked about, right? It is, you know, we made you make mistakes, right? We, you know, we could have had multiple we could have had a Bored Ape and a Mutant Ape by this time, but we don't, because we lost a lot of money, right?
Yeah.
So it happens, and it is what it is. And to your point, it's about the journey. Let me dive in a little bit more there, because we're going to give you a grade. Unless do you have more to talk about episode 1, or is that in your mind kind of wrapping it up?
Episode 1. So episode 1 was just childhood, right?
Yeah.
So pre-university, no, nothing more to talk about.
Okay. Well, this is where we're going to change your mind, because we're going to give you a grade on episode 1. I'm going to give you about a 50%, man. I'm sorry to be so harsh, but I know there's so much more there. So let's talk about, you know, childhood. Who were some of your biggest influences growing up, and why?
Who or what?
Yeah, who or what were some of your biggest influences growing up, and why?
Okay, so from a super young age, I used to read quite a lot and be super into Apple products. So my main influence and person that I look up to when I was smaller was Steve Jobs. Read his biography, was devastated when he unfortunately passed away, and just loved every aspect of how he handled things. From a business perspective, now that I'm older, I appreciate that from a personal standpoint, and how he treated employees and stuff was not necessarily the best way to approach things, but at the time he was my inspiration and my role model.
Mm-hmm.
And what were some of those concepts that you think you got from him? Like, what inspired you? Was it the fact that he built the company, or do you think like lessons or business lessons learned that you retained from soaking in everything this man did?
I think more than anything, in terms of what I've applied from what I've seen him doing, is persevering. Even when he was kicked out of his own company, he created a competing company that got bought out by Apple, and then he worked his way up, clawed his way up back to the managing position in Apple. No matter what life threw at him, this man would come back stronger, and that's what I admired most.
And how do you think, have you had instances in your lifetime where you can reflect on you persevering yourself?
Absolutely. I mean, seeing as we're on episode 1 and not in Web3 yet, in my childhood, I feel like the biggest period in my life where I felt like that was when I moved from the US to Romania. I had never lived in Romania. I spoke the language, but on an intermediate level. I got thrown straight into school when I came back. They use cursive writing here. I didn't know cursive writing. Had to literally learn how to write again, because that's how the school system is. Like, they insist on everyone writing in the same way, because then when they're grading the exams, basically the teacher doesn't know who wrote the exam, like what student it was. So my type of writing would have been a differentiating factor. They would have caught on that it was me. So I literally had to relearn how to write in cursive. And just a massive setback from going to a kid living in Atlanta to moving to Romania, having nobody, having no friends, and having to rebuild my entire life. I feel like that's an instance of this that I experienced in my childhood.
Yeah.
And even going like to episode 2 and 3, but we'll go into that later. I can link it. There have been.
Let me ask you, you said Apple was a big influence, right?
Yeah.
And that's what led you to wanting to learn about Steve Jobs. What was it about Apple?
Apple? I absolutely love the simplicity of their devices, and I still am a simplicity maxi. If you look at our branding and stuff, we try to keep it as simple as possible. At the moment, this may not be as obvious because we've not published that much art and stuff, but what we're doing now, basically... Sorry, I'll come back to the exact position.
That's all right. That's all right. It doesn't need to be the exact.
So right now, this is going to be flipped, but we're working on like an entire creative journey where you scroll for like 5 minutes and going into how the Metalancers were created, and everything about the project and like how I arrange my personal life is based on simplicity, trying to keep things as simple as possible, and it works for me. And that's what I love about Apple.
But that's like an adult or a person who's gone through school. You can look back and recognize that simplicity was what attracted you to it. But you said at a very young age you were interested in Apple. And what I'm saying is, as through the eyes of a kid, what made it Apple? Was it just because that happened to be the product your parents gave you? What was it about Apple then as a child that like drew you to it?
So even when I was super young, I was super into like tech and stuff. Before the iPod and iPhone were launched, I always wanted a PDA, if you remember those.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Nice.
I had a Palm Pilot. What are you talking about?
Hell yeah, man.
That's exactly what I wanted.
Yeah. Go ahead.
And yeah, I absolutely wanted a PDA. And then when I started to see how simple iPods are, iPhones, iPods, iPod Touch especially, how thin it was that a specific edition of the iPod Touch 4 was my first Apple device, and just holding it in the Apple store, seeing how thin it is, just felt magical, I guess. And ever since, I've sort of been super into Apple, and Steve Jobs is an influence in my early childhood.
Dude, it's amazing that you bring that up, because I've worked for a big brand, and we worked with Apple on advertising campaigns, and they would use that in their meetings all the time. Or like when people experience Apple, it should feel like magic. So the fact that you said that is pretty impressive, that they at least conveyed that at some point in time. And yeah, I mean, they really did take that adoption curve and hit the top, right? They brought it to the masses. They made a device that is relatively complex when you build it, extremely simple and easy to understand. And that was the power and beauty of it. Maddie, do you have anything before I ask my next question?
I mean, I have other questions, but you're willing. Go ahead, man.
Yeah, no. You go over your next question. I'll see if.
Sure. Okay. So you moved to Romania. You have to learn a lot of new things or reestablish yourself. Sounds like then you moved back to the U.S., or did you go?
No, actually, no. After Romania, I moved to the UK.
Okay, so that was for college.
For university.
So then let me ask you this: what was it that drew you to law as a field of study?
Good question.
I'm a very rigorous person with a massive amount of attention to detail, and even like when I joined university, I knew that I wasn't going to pursue what I would do in university, but I still wanted to go to college. It was an ambition and something that I wanted to do. And I wanted to study something that's intellectually challenging for me. So that's why I went with law.
So basically just because it was tough, right? It was tough, it was challenging, and you wanted to see what
Pretty
you could
much.
do.
Pretty much, it was either law or economics. But due to a hiccup in how I chose my, I'm not sure if you know the International Baccalaureate curriculum. It's basically the European version of AP exams.
Okay.
Yeah. So the way I chose my AP subjects, I didn't do math at the highest level possible. And then if I wanted to get into a top 10 econ university in the UK or Europe, they would ask for math at the highest level.
Right.
And then it was, so I was 50-50 split between law and economics, and then not being able to do economics at a top college, it just made the decision easier to go with law.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. Kind of a little bit of a shift as far as people or mentors. Anybody in throughout your childhood make a big impact on your mindset or impress you as to how you're molded your thought process as you've grown older?
So I have to think about that. The immediate example that comes to mind is my father.
Yeah.
He's a software engineer and architect, and I've always really found it admirable how he builds things. And it's not just software; like he tinkers and does projects for fun as well in his free time with like Arduinos, Raspberry Pis. And I spent a lot of time around him, seeing that, doing that. I'm also a bit into coding and stuff. Like I can definitely read code. I can code slightly, but I would never like do a coding project on my own. But yeah, I'd say he's like the immediate example that comes to mind.
Yeah. And was he, did he, because you have this entrepreneurial mindset as well, did that come from him as well? Did he push you to, be curious, or, anything from your mom or dad, or if you have siblings, like where did any of those additional mindsets or concepts come from?
So I've always had an entrepreneurial spirit, and it really helped that my dad encouraged it. He would always tell me, you don't need to go to college. You can just start a company with that money. You don't need to, you shouldn't, even after I graduated, he was like, you shouldn't get a job. That's how they get you. You get comfortable. They start paying you a good salary, and then you start having responsibilities. You start having a family, and then you can't leave and work on your own thing because the risk is too big.
I like that a lot, man. And that
So
there's
he always encouraged it.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's very rare to tell your parents to get out of school and tell you not to get a job. So that's a pretty impactful thing as the way that melded your mind. Maddie, anything there?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because before you were talking about how they were, and I get it, you were 12 years old. So listening to a 12-year-old about buying Bitcoin, I didn't listen to much older people who are much smarter when they said to get Bitcoin. So I certainly wouldn't have listened to a 12-year-old. But it sounds like as a software engineer and somebody a little bit of like the rebellious, like, hey, don't get sucked into the system. It sounds like your dad would have gravitated towards Bitcoin. Do you know maybe, or did he, or what was that all about? Because I would think you talking about Bitcoin would get him like into it.
So he's always been into the tech side of Bitcoin, of smart contracts on Ethereum and stuff like that. But in terms of financial investments, his risk tolerance is very conservative, very 401k index fund sort of person. So while he likes the tech behind it, he wouldn't necessarily invest into it at that time.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes total sense. So let's kind of, anything else that like really sticks out about your childhood that you'd like to bring up to kind of that really helped you be the way you are today? Or can we move into kind of that episode 2 of you going to law school and finding Web3?
I think law school and going into Web3 is
Okay. So let's do that. Take us through. We definitely got and the reason we do this is because we now have way more bigger understanding about why
Yeah.
you think the way that you think, right? And Apple was a huge influence. Simplicity. Your dad's forcing you to be an entrepreneur. Take us
Mhm.
through law school. Tell us about a little bit about that experience, but again, more about like what did you really take from law school and your early professional career in finance that you've been utilizing and has impacted the way you are today?
Okay, so I'll start with going through law school and what I've taken away from that, and then I'll get into like the finance part because it's
Perfect.
easier to sum up. So, law school was a journey. It was 3 years. I got there, and once again, I was in a foreign country, knew nobody, had to make new friends, had to adapt to a new country. Even though they speak English as well, some of the people there, my colleagues and friends, had a very heavy Scottish accent and stuff, which still made it very difficult to
Yes.
understand each other at some points. Because I was like, okay, I'll go UK because they speak English and I know English. And then I get there and it's like half the
This
people I have to guess every other word.
yep.
But it's all good. It took me like a week to adapt. And I guess in my first year, I mainly learned to slow down and pay attention to the details. Before, I was very fast paced, rushing to get things done.
Mm,
But then after my first like exam, where I realized that, hey, all of this rushing is making me miss the small details, and the small details really, really matter. So I sort of slowed down with the way I approach tasks and the way I structure my life, even. And ever since then, I have absolutely kept this slow mindset going on when, well, it's not slow. I'm still a fast paced person, but it's just pausing, taking a step back, looking at the things again from a different perspective, and then coming back to it. And I'd say this has helped tremendously. It's helped
Mhm.
tremendously in my personal life. It's helped tremendously to make sure I don't FOMO into random projects.
Yep.
um, and yeah,
Yeah, I mean, and I think a lot of people confuse being methodical with being slow.
that's the
But when
exact
you
word I should have used. Yes.
when you are methodical, the outside world thinks you're taking forever, but then they're amazed that you only had to do it once because you're not redoing a lot of there's not a lot of wasted effort in correcting mistakes. And you ever seen somebody type really fast and you realize they spend most of their time hitting the backspace button? And it's like if
Absolutely.
you just actually would look at the keyboard and type correctly, you'd probably actually have typed more than you wanted to. It's kind of like that. So yeah, man, I think that's well said. That's good. So keep
Yeah.
going. Yeah, you're in law school. You're slowing down to
So this
speed
was my
up.
first year, yeah. And then in my second year, that's when I realized. So in my second year, COVID hit.
Hmm.
Um, at like the start of my first year, I had just moved back to the UK as well for college for my second year, and then they
Hmm.
announced that everything is getting shut down. You need no, well, actually, COVID started in my first year, in my second semester, but then over the summer, the UK was sort of more relaxed, and they were like, "We're gonna have a hybrid approach. You can come to some lectures, and some are gonna be online." Move there, quarantine for 2 weeks based on their information, bunch of PCR tests as well. And then after my quarantine is over, they send an email literally on the day that my quarantine is over that all in-person classes are suspended for the first term, and that we can all go home. And I'm like, okay, well, I literally just flew in and quarantined for 2 weeks and carried my entire life in two suitcases. Like, could you have told me this 2 weeks ago? Um, and basically, my second year, I spent it at home back in Romania studying
Hmm.
remotely.
yeah.
And I'd say this was the period of time, like for a lot of us, when we were at home during COVID, a lot of things changed. And this is when I really got super, super into Web3.
Right.
Hmm.
Um, this is also the year where I got super into the pro bono society and extracurriculars. But it was difficult to do as much stuff remotely. compared to my third year of college when I was there in person and actually making an impact physically, getting on the ground, going on a field. Wait, I lost my train of thoughts.
Second
About
year in college,
Yeah.
hitting law school, impact of
yeah,
COVID, and now you're at home,
yeah.
learning remotely, doing pro bono works. Anything from that kind of second and third year in law school really stands out in your mind that kind of progressed the way that you were thinking?
I think the biggest thing, and going back to clawing your way back up, in our second year, so Pro Bono Society for many years, it had been, well, for many years, for like 2 years before me, we had gotten a bunch of awards for Best Pro Bono Society in the UK, Best Community Impact, all of these like awards for student-led societies. And then in my second year, we only won like one award that was local. It wasn't a nationwide award. So it was sort of a step back. And I was leading the society at the time. Obviously, we were set back by COVID because the work we do is very field related and like going into prisons and stuff. And they just told us, no, you're not allowed to go.
Right.
They weren't even accepting letters. But then in my third year, I clawed back up with the help of the amazing team. We were a team of 25 people, fully volunteering while studying to run this society. And we clawed our way back up. We won all those awards again, back to number one. And it's been like that ever since I left as well. I've been checking in on them on Instagram.
That's really cool.
Yeah, so yeah, it's just this, no matter what life throws at you, you have to keep on running and going back up.
I love that, man.
Yeah. Let me ask a question. And this is, it's kind of skipping ahead. I don't want to get too much into your project, but because of what you just said, I think this is interesting, right? Mikey and I have had conversations about this, and that is the impact of work from home, right? A lot of people are all about this idea that I don't have to commute to work. I can just stay home. I can do my job and things are going to work just fine, right? Having been on both sides of the fence as both I've been an employee and I've been the business owner. And as an employee, I love the idea of working from home. As a business owner, it terrifies me, right? Because the bottom line is there's just no metric whatsoever that's going to say the efficiency is the same as going into the office, right? That being said, are there outliers? Are there certain people that can do that well? Sure. But just the average parent is going to have a whole new list of distractions, as we saw. So you had law school at home and law school there, and you talked about the difference being there made, right? Would you say it's a significant difference?
It is. It absolutely is a significant difference. I feel like in-person working is much more efficient for most people, just because you're free of distractions. And I guess it's a bit different in college as well, because with law, you have a ton of law books, statute books, and stuff that are there physically in the library. And my entire second year, I didn't have access to any of those, which was a major setback. But I can also speak like our project has a physical office in Bucharest where all the employees and partners come to work every day except for Fridays. Fridays is the work from home day. And of course, we're flexible. Like some of the people who are employed are parents as well.
Sure.
Of course, we're flexible. Like if they have something to do on Tuesdays with their kid, like to pick him up from school, they can work from home. Absolutely. But on average, I really believe that most people work better from the office. And it's not that they don't want to work from home properly, because I'm sure everyone is 100% dedicated to what they're doing. It's more just being there with all your colleagues and not having to schedule a Google Meets or something. You just turn your head and you speak to the person next to you. It's just much more efficient.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that happens at the quote unquote water cooler that just wouldn't happen if you were at home. And the reason I asked it was because I agree with you. I think there's a major difference. I think it's going to be an interesting, I don't know if it's a struggle, but a lot of the concept of Web3 in general, and specifically the NFT craze, was this awesome ability to be able to kind of bring people from all over the world and collaborate. However, it's more of a work from home atmosphere. And it's interesting the pull on both sides of that. And I'd be interested, Mikey, any thoughts you had, or you, Christian, on just how we've learned this from COVID, but now in Web3, is this a detractor? Is this a benefit? I think it's a benefit because we can bring talent from anywhere, right? I think that part is a massive benefit. But I do think there are definitely if we could pull if you could get the same team in the same room, I think more magic would happen. That's kind of where I'm leaning towards. What do y'all think?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great point, and I would say Christian brought up probably the number one point, which is it's kind of counterintuitive to what you're saying, right? Is the reason crypto is, especially the NFT space, is the reason it is today, is because of COVID, is because people were home, is because they had more time. They had more money because of the government and stimulus to dump money into this, to experiment with the Web3. But at the same time, it's created very frustrating things of scams and empty hype and all of these things that you can maliciously do online relatively easy, right? It's a lot harder to do it in person. And what we're going to see is, I think, is interesting, is as this continues to progress, the inverse a little bit, which is going to be a real, I think, hybrid model is going to be the new norm, right? But what the strong NFT people are going to become companies, and those companies will have offices, and they will want to interact human to human, whether it's more in a video conference, but this whole non-doxed anonymous thing is going to go away. It's going to become formalized. And so it's funny to think the reason we're here is because of the work remote and COVID, and now it's going to maybe inch back the other way. What are your thoughts, Christian?
Yeah, I partially agree. I feel like there's a reason that companies, big corporations, offer talented people from around the world relocation cost coverage, because for them it's worth it to pay the cost to relocate someone if they're willing to their office and have them physically there. I feel like a lot of top projects already have an office. I know DGOTS has like the D house where they all like basically almost live together and work. I wouldn't go as far as that. I feel like that's a bit unhealthy with the work-life separation. But yeah, I mean, there's both sides of it. I feel like Web3 is different than any other industry, though, because in Web3, everyone sort of starts it as a hobby, and just out of enjoyment for the space. No matter how good you are, there are points where you will lose money in Web3, and quite a lot of it at some points. And I feel like the people who are still here now and are talented and are working on legit projects, they can work from anywhere. I really feel that way. But I really think that once these projects and companies have the money to get physical offices and relocate people, everyone's going to be hyped. Just think of NFT New York City, which was like a week ago. Everyone was so hyped to see each other and to interact on a human level in person versus just Discord and Twitter all day.
Absolutely. It's the biggest impact that you don't go for the conference. Maddie, any thoughts before we move on?
No, man, I just thought that when you brought up just the kind of that dichotomy between your second and third year, it just made me think about Web3 as a whole. But I think it's great. So kind of take us through. You're in year 3. Now you're back at school. You're trying to rebuild the pro bono society. Take us from there.
Yeah, so my third year sort of passes by as a blur between my final exams and rebuilding the pro bono society as the president. There's nothing very impactful that I would mention. It was just a lot of studying, a lot of grinding, a lot of sleepless nights working on stuff. Unfortunately, my team was also very, very busy with studies. Most of them were final year students as well. So there was a lot of me picking up the pieces and being in the library till like late hours, like 3 a.m., and then having an 8 a.m. lecture. It was just a blur passing by. And I'm super happy of our achievements in that year with pro bono, which I've mentioned before as well. But the biggest thing is, I think right after I graduated, I didn't even go to my own graduation because I was busy working on a Web3 project in Romania. And I don't know if you guys have any other questions about university, and if not, I'll just jump into my Web3 journey.
Well,
Yes.
you said you transitioned from law to finance.
Yeah, talk to us a
Yeah.
little bit about that experience. And I think after you take us through your finance experience too, I love to frame the question, and you don't have to answer this right away, but be thinking about it as you're telling us. You mentioned a really impactful thing, I think, which was slowing down, being methodical has really helped you with the success, right? As
Yeah.
you're taking us through this next phase, love to hear principles you learned that you have helped you be successful, because on paper you are successful. You got through one of the top 10 law schools in the world, really. And now you've done finance and you've started a Web3 career. That is success to a lot of people. So I'd love to hear that side as well.
Okay.
So
You said
start with the finance
okay.
career, and then we'll ladder up to that.
So actually, finance came a bit after Web3. If
Okay.
you take the events in chronological sequence, but they were
Okay.
very close to each other.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'll start with finance, even though it's a few months after Web3.
Yeah, you can
Yeah.
intertwine the two. It's fine.
Yeah. So finance, I was basically analyst at ING Bank in their Bucharest headquarters. It was awesome sort of seeing how big corporation works. It was my first workplace as well in the finance area of their bank. It was a super fun job. They offered us a lot of opportunities, like going to their main headquarters in Amsterdam, training days, stuff. I didn't really stick around for that long. That was like after 8 months on the job. I left the job after 6 months. So it wasn't a very long professional career in finance. It was actually a very, very short one. But yeah, I learned a lot of things there, but it wasn't an environment for me. I really enjoy making my own schedule, even if that involves working way more than 8 hours at a desk job.
Sure.
And I just enjoy this hustle that you have to do. And I'm sure you guys are familiar with this.
Yes.
Yeah. It's just more fun than
Well,
getting into work, being told what to do. You do it and then you go
absolutely.
home.
Yeah.
And I don't even think there's I mean, here's the thing. We almost feel compelled to justify leaving corporate America because so much of the world compels us to join it, right?
Yeah.
And so, the committee of they says, go to college, get a degree, get a job, work your way up, eventually one day retire, right? You invest in the 401k. That's the model that most people are going to adhere to. And so,
Yeah.
as entrepreneurs, we spend a lot of time justifying why we don't do that. But one thing I would just give you some advice on, man, don't you don't have to. Here's the thing. It was successful. It's just like dating, right? If the goal is to find a winner, don't be upset that you found somebody that wasn't, right? That means you were actually achieving the goal, right? And so
Yeah.
what it sounds like what you did is you went into finance and it did exactly what it was supposed to do, which you learned some valuable information, but you also learned, hey, this doesn't make me happy. This doesn't fulfill me. This isn't ticking off all of the boxes that matter to me. And so, great, I've tried it, right? I wouldn't want to tell somebody to just guess. Now you can definitively say, I want to do something for myself. And you're finding that's where your passion is. And the next part of that, I would say, is never stop doing that, right? One of the things that Mikey keeps me on my toes in, because I love to get comfortable, is being willing to pivot at any time, man. And it's like we went from video games to NFTs, and I'm not even sure I knew what an NFT was at the time, but that's where we had to go. And so just be part of that adventure. I think that's a really cool thing.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. It's important to stay out of your comfort zone. It's okay to be comfortable, but don't stay there too long.
Yes,
Exactly.
exactly. So what take us into Web3, man. I feel like you've got a wealth of knowledge because you've been into crypto for so long. I really am interested in this Web3 journey before we even talk about Metalancers because I'm sure you've had some really interesting
Mhm.
experiences. So let's go through that phase.
Yep.
So like I mentioned, it started like in my childhood with like Bitcoin faucets and stuff. Stayed relatively connected to the industry, sort of just seeing prices go up. Then a few of my friends, it was actually one of my closest friends. He was like a whiz kid. Basically, when just to get an idea of the kid, when we were like 14, 15, outside in like my housing compound, um, he left one day. He was like, "Sorry, I've got to meet with my accountant," and I was like, "Okay."
Not many
Absolute
14-year-olds have an accountant.
absolute genius of a kid. He's doing Web3 stuff right now as well. And basically, he started to get super into Web3, and we sort of encouraged each other in this journey. He went into like the coding side of things, building products as like their CEO, but also the primary code person. I went more into like the social side of things, like with marketing, consultancy, launching projects, giving advice to projects, stuff like that. And of course, back in like the bull market, I got scammed on a bunch of coins, like one does. Lost most of my savings in meme coins, unfortunately. Lost some more in CryptoZoo, Logan Paul's project, which I'm presuming you've heard of from like CoffeeZilla and stuff.
He's getting sued hard, right?
Yeah, he is. Even like in his apology video, he said I'll refund the holders of the NFT at mint price from my own money, and everyone was like, okay, he regrets it. At least he's refunding people. Like the harm's been done, but he's giving them their money back. To this day, nobody has received their money back.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
He's
He's he
completely
he's
silent.
definitely a piece of work, huh?
Yeah. Um, although I strongly believe that with many of these like celebrities, their agents and the people around them sort of drag them into this because it's
Yep.
such a new industry, and their like agent just sees it as an opportunity to make money. I'm not
Mhm.
sure. I'm not talking specifically about Logan Paul, but with some celebrities that have advertised stuff in the past or put their name on things, um, I strongly believe that they received the wrong advice, and they should try to make things right. But a lot of these people are just acting on their advisor's knowledge and not really thinking any moves for themselves. They're just like living life and doing what their advisor tells them.
Yeah.
Uh, like Snoop Dogg has his face on so many products in so many industries, he doesn't even know what he's on. Like his agent
Yeah.
handles everything for him. And when you sort of reach that level, it's a fine line to draw between, hey, this guy scammed these many people, because at the end of the day, he did.
Yeah.
But also the fact that like he doesn't know, and this could have been like a soft drink in a store with I don't know, uh, some random artist on it, that then gets pulled away by the who does
The
Food and
FDA.
Drink Safety, FDA, yeah, pulled away by the FDA, like a recall or something. I don't know, but I went on a tangent. So lost a bunch of money in meme coins and stuff like that. Then continued my journey in crypto. Did a bit of trading. Got into a lot of projects as a community member. Started sort of moderating community management for random projects, but none of these were like paid positions. I was just sort of enjoying the vibes and helping out the moderation team with some projects. They wanted to hear my advice on community management and stuff. And then right after I graduated uni, a friend of mine approached me with a project idea on Solana. This was last summer. I immediately left the UK before my own graduation, went to work with him on that project. It was, wait, Mickey, did you freeze? Oh, no, you're just standing still. Sorry, I thought my computer froze.
He's just a statue. He's
Dude,
focused.
I am honing in on what you're saying, bro.
Okay.
That's good.
Yeah. So I joined that project. We ended up not minting, even after investing a large amount of personal funds into that project. The market changed drastically from the time we started working on it until the time we were ready to launch. Solana dropped from $150 to $30. And we were building actual utility, which required actual dollars to pay engineers, developers, design teams to develop. It wasn't just a degen mint. And we had already announced the mint price in Sol, and it was unrealistic to change it. We would have had the community unhappy, but we also could not build the project based on the same Sol mint price when Sol went down in value 5x over the course of 3 months. So
we got tore up on that as well, man. We know that pain.
Yeah, it sucks. And we put a lot of effort into that project. We were working like 8 a.m. to 3 a.m., then waking up, sleeping at the office, waking up the next day, grinding again. And it's this it's a disappointment. But what I am glad I took away from this is we could have gone ahead and minted at the lower US dollar price and not delivered. And a lot of people would have done that. We chose to lose personal funds, quite a lot of them, at least for our level and our incomes. And we never scammed a single person. And I think reputation is the most important thing in this space. Hands down. Like at the end of the day, your reputation is everything in this space. I learned this from, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Discord or the Instagram page called Metaverse with a 3 in it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Are you in their Discord as well?
I'm not in the Discord, but I'm aware of what from the Instagram.
So a while back, like way back when they were like under 100K followers, they open up this like super exclusive Discord, and the founder was he was sort of a mentor in this space to me. And half the time he was talking about how your reputation is the most important thing. And even now, I've hired a few people that were with me during that time in that server, because I know that to them as well, reputation is everything, and they would never do anything to compromise that in this space. But yeah,
well, I think a takeaway from that as well is this, right? There are a lot of people who approached Web3, and let's just say specifically NFTs and the bull run that we went through a year ago, as temporary, right? And if you view this as a temporary thing, reputation doesn't matter. But precisely because reputation is something that you value, means that you believe in its long-term use, right? I mean, you think it's going to be around if you care about your reputation within it. Does that make sense? And I think that in itself says something. So I think that's good, man. So you guys decided not to mint and just take people's money, to do the right thing. You took the high road. What are some lessons you pulled from that, man? Other than reputation matters. You said you were working 8 a.m. to 3 a.m. Obviously, you got a lot of experience in that. What are some takeaways you would tell people who are looking for projects of their own, or maybe just some things that you've taken into this new project? What would you say?
I think in the Web3 space, especially where everything is 24/7, you need to prioritize your mental health and not burning out, because working for a week 8 a.m. to 3 a.m. is sustainable for 1 week. Then you probably have to cut it and take half a day, 3/4 of a day off, just to sleep, to eat, to regenerate. And by the time you have to do that, you're already working less efficiently. You're already losing time that you had to stay over like 2, 3 a.m. the week before to work. feeling like you're getting more done. So it's important to remember that this 24/7 culture in crypto and in NFTs is not forever sustainable. You have to prioritize your mental health because you will be more efficient, and the creative ideas that come from you will be of a higher quality and more developed if you prioritize sleep. Um, I think even more than mental health, because that's a very wide area. I'd say sleep and food are the most important. I was eating very unhealthily, ordering food every single meal, McDonald's every day at like 2 a.m. I put weight on, I was less efficient, and it was just not a good time. And it slowed us down.
Sure,
Dude,
absolutely.
fantastic insight there. And that's going to make a really good short for you to help drop some knowledge on the space because it is very difficult. I mean, what's really interesting to me too is these people sit in these spaces for tens and tens of hours on hand, but they're not monetizing either.
Yeah.
You know, it's like if you're gonna spend 98% of your life doing something, you might want to figure out, unless you really enjoy it and that's just what you want to do. But a lot of these people, let's be honest, are here to make some money. And the fact that the other thing I'm trying to get at is I think people misunderstand hard work and showing up day in and day out, and they just think that's magically going to make them some money and progress
Yeah.
them when they're not thinking about the strategy behind how to monetize, how to really grow in the space. They think just sitting in a Twitter space is magically going to do something for them. There's such a big
Yeah.
misconception there, you know?
Yeah, I think a lot of people, just because you're busy doesn't mean you're productive. And just because you're productive doesn't mean you're profitable, right? And so the idea here is, the proverb, work smart, not hard. Well, do both, right? But work within your limits and find a balance there. Yeah, spending all day in Twitter spaces, or let me give you another one that this, stings when some people hear it, but like, just because you're reading 12 books a month or 100 books a year, or whatever it is on leadership and team building, reading the books doesn't do anything. You know what I mean? It should give you some concepts and something like that. But I can sit there reading all day. That doesn't make me Bill Gates. You know what I mean? You got to do something, right? And so it's finding that balance. And this goes back to what you said, right, Christian? It's about being methodical. It's not about
Yeah.
being fast. It's about being methodical. And I think that that's a big takeaway.
Yeah, especially now that you mentioned like books and spaces and monetization. So on spaces, I feel like the people just hanging out, it's true they aren't thinking about how to monetize this time. Sure, I also hang out in Twitter spaces sometimes in the background. Like even
Sure.
earlier, I texted you that
Yeah.
I can't send something right now because I'm in traffic. I was on a Twitter space just listening. Um, but I feel like talent has been recognized in very interesting ways in Web3 recently. I'm not sure if you know Alex JM. He had a blue Root Troop profile picture. He makes memes. Um, he's a big guy. He's a relatively big guy on Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
But the idea is, and he's also a friend of mine, like just from Twitter and Web3 DMs and stuff, not IRL. But something very interesting, he randomly went from making memes to announcing that he has been recruited by Azuki to help them with their marketing strategy, and he's now part of Azuki. So I feel like Web3 is opening up a bunch of new opportunities for people like no other place in time, or no other industry where you could just be making memes online and then someone recruits you without you even messaging them like, hey, do you want to be on our marketing team for like legit one of the coolest projects in the space. I think it's very cool.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
it's absolutely. But that again, um, is back to our point of Alex realized from Rude Troop, which Morgan Stone's been on this show multiple times, And Morgan literally got his start in the fact of that he knew the power of memes on the internet. And applying memes to Web3, it was a massive creative outlet, right? And he cultivated a whole community around memes. Hence, Alex was the way he
Yeah,
was now. But that is an example of, okay, I'm going to understand that memes are an effective way of communication. Web3 loves them. Let's utilize that to get exposure, grow influence, and that influence is now turned into an actual job.
yeah, yeah.
Whereas sitting in a Twitter space and saying, I'm showing up every day for a year, that's not a tangible, actionable thing, right?
That's true. That's true. Yeah. I think building an audience is the most important thing someone can do right now in this space to propel themselves and set themselves up for success in the upcoming years and months. I feel like it's the one thing that has slowed me down in this space is I was participating, I was scrolling, I was reading, I was on top of everything, but I didn't take the time to build my personal brand and an audience. And what can I say? Things would have been much easier launching projects when you already have a big audience. And once you have an audience, you can monetize pretty much anything. It's the number one gateway into making profit in this space and making it ethically. And just by working, I mean, not by trading or anything.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. I mean, audience equals influence. Influence is profitable in many different fields and really all of them. So yeah, for sure. I agree.
So take us to the next phases here. You've gone through a Solana project. You had some
Challenges and hurdles.
really good challenges, but I think dealt with them the appropriate way. And now you've got a new project. So take us through that journey and why you decided to start anew, knowing that you went through some pretty tough adversities.
So straight after getting done with the first project that we were supposed to launch on Solana, I went straight ahead and applied all my knowledge and the mistakes that we made to set up a consulting agency, help other projects not make the same mistakes I made. And I also wanted to bring a big change to the way consulting works in this industry. I feel like at the moment there's a lot of I'm not sure if you've ever had to interact with any advisory or consultancy agencies in the space, but with a lot of them, it's very sketchy. They claim to have worked with projects but cannot provide proof of working with them. Everyone says that they've sold out multiple projects, that in the last year they've generated $100 million in revenue for their clients, that all of their clients have a 99% rate of selling out, and all of these outlandish claims that cannot be true for every single agency out there. And I really tried to do it in a transparent way. My trademark was I would approach people in the space building projects and tell them, look, completely for free, I'll take 2 hours out of my day. I'll analyze your project from both a strategy perspective, a marketing perspective, and a community perspective. And then here's my Calendly, book a call. I'll walk you through this and I'll give you all this insight and even tell you how you can apply my like observations to improve the way your project is being marketed and stuff. And you are under absolutely no obligation to pay or hire me. I'm literally teaching you how to do it on your own. But by that point, people had already seen that I was adding value to their lives and to their project. So they would just decide, hey, man, don't you want to just do it yourself? And I'd be like, oh, as a matter of fact, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, this is a recurring theme from a lot of people on the show. Is just if you provide value, you don't have to you don't have to try to stand on a resume or anything like that. Just start providing value, and people notice that it's amazing how that tends to work, and that we've seen that over and over again in this space.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think in any industry, to be honest, as long as you're providing value, like I was watching a short form video. I don't know what platform it was on, but it was basically talking about how, like, if you're in sales, you're at a car dealership, you sell the most cars and close the most deals. nobody is going to care if you walk into work like an hour and a half late every day and leave an hour early, and that you eat at your desk instead of the cafeteria. You're the number one closer. You do the deals. You add value to the company. Nobody's going to tell you absolutely anything about what you're doing, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. You're adding value. Yeah, I think that's it's even more so in Web3, where there's a lot of people just grifting around and trying to yeah, there's a lot of grifters in the space.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It's
So
very
take
hard to tell.
so take us
Yeah.
through that, you providing value, and I mean, does that transition right into Metalancers, or is there anything before there?
Well, that transitions. It's not directly related to Metalancer, in terms of like the people who I'm working on for Metalancer now are not people that I met during my consultancy business journey and stuff like that. It's actually an old friend. He's a common. So my co-founder, his name is Tudor. He owns another Web3 company as well called Hive. What Hive does, it's a Web3 job marketplace supporting five different blockchains, 100 different cryptocurrencies, escrow contracts. So the idea is to remove, as like, if you can do it with a smart contract, don't leave it up to trust. There's no need to trust people in Web3 that they pay you. You can do that through a smart contract, through a decentralized arbitration committee. Everything can be done on chain, and that's basically what Hive is, while at the same time supporting the most currencies out of any job marketplace, making it easy for a project. Like, let's say a project has their own coin, they could literally pay people through Hive in that coin. There's no need for them to switch it to USDT or whatever they would need to pay someone in. And basically, Tudor approached me a while back about Metalancer. I jumped on board right away. It sounded like an awesome idea. I absolutely loved what he had envisioned for the art, for the story. Of course, the project and the art, the story, everything has undergone fundamental changes from our first discussion about like dreaming this up. But yeah, again, I went off topic and forgot what the question was. Sorry.
Totally
well,
cool.
let's.
We were transitioning to the project. One thing before we get to the project, and we'd like to ask this question, especially for people that have your experiences, knowing what you know now. If there was someone that it was interested in Web3 and NFTs at this moment in time, not saying, during the hype, what would you advise them or recommend them to do to get into Web3? Tools, strategies, tips. What would that be in your perspective?
So firstly, I would recommend that for the first 6 months in the space, if they truly want to learn, okay, not 6 months. 6 months might be too much. For the first 3 to 4 months, do not buy anything. Do not touch a single coin. Do not touch a single NFT. Be there to learn. Follow. I'd give them a list of people who I consider trustworthy and good sources of information. Tell them to follow them. Just scroll through Twitter, interact in the comments. One thing I really like about this space is no matter how small your account is, even when I was like at 20 or 30 followers, I would comment on big accounts, adding my insight to a specific issue that they're debating, and I'd get a reply back. And I'd really advise them to get involved in these conversations, join some Discords. But again, here with Discords, you got to be careful because there's Discords that are positive influences and Discords that are very profit-centered. And I think in the first 3-4 months in the space, you just have to leave money aside. Imagine there's no money involved in this space and simply be there to learn and to integrate yourself in the Web3 culture.
Awesome. I love it. I think that's great advice. And I'd love to, we'll chat in DMs, but I'd love to get that list of people that you think is a good place to start with. Because
I was going to
think
ask
it
that
make
same thing, Mikey. Good call.
great content. And you know, it will be powerful for both of us. So great insight.
Nice.
And let's now transition straight into Metalancer, man. Give us the 30 seconds, and this is the challenge. 30 seconds, a minute max. You need to describe to us what Metalancer is and why I should be interested in spending my hard-earned money with you.
Okay, so I'll get straight into our main utility, which is we're building a comic book reading platform. So recently, most of the media consumption online has been centered around video content. There's been a shift away from comic books and stuff in terms of making them easily accessible. The current platforms like Webtoons and Tapas are completely screwing over their creators and their consumers. And we've got to consider that Web3 people love digital collectibles, and so do comic book lovers. So it's the perfect intersection in terms of collectibles and providing an awesome experience for our holders and for the people that are using the app.
Okay, so let me do this. Let me rewind a little bit. I get the general idea. Let's get really fundamental. So most successful businesses solve a problem, right?
Correct.
So if I hear what you're saying, there was a problem with the current way people were able to read comic books digitally, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So you recognize that problem. So do me a favor. What precisely is that problem? Is it just that they're screwing over the artists and the readers?
It's not only that, it's also that the consumers, the readers in this case, have to undergo a relatively expensive experience to access these comic books because sort of everyone is just taking a cut.
Yeah.
It's not accessible like Netflix, where you have a, I don't know, $15 subscription a month and you watch
Whatever you
100
want.
whatever you want. Yeah.
Okay. So you saw a problem with the way comic books were being read digitally. You wanted to solve that using Web3. Is that what you're saying this is going to do?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Gotcha. Now I think I follow. So here's what I'm going to do. With that being said, 30 to 60 seconds. I've never met you before. I have no idea. You don't know if I know anything about comic books. You don't know if I know anything about Web3. In 30 to 60 seconds, tell me about your project. What are you doing? Why should I be interested?
Okay. So we're building a comic book / anime consumption app where you truly own each episode. It's sent to a custodial Polygon wallet that we create for you. And you can buy each episode with an in-app purchase to make onboarding as easy as possible and abstracted from Web3 for the average app downloader. Creators can publish content on the app. And the key thing about this is they get paid fairly. As the current platforms rip creators off.
Dude, now that was beautiful. And you're going to have to, or we are going to have to cut that one up for you because that's an excellent short that you should be sharing. That was very well articulated. You talked about the power of what you're delivering and why it is important. So that is good. So
I feel like, sorry, if I can just cut in there for a second, 30 seconds in my mind was very rushed. I tried to fit in a lot of things at the same time. 30 to 60 seconds. I'm like, okay, this is enough time. I've pitched it in a minute before.
Well, it goes faster in our head than we think we're actually saying it.
Right.
But and the reason I had you do that was because it's a fantastic exercise. And Mike and I go through it a lot, man. Like, what are we doing?
Right.
Why should anybody care? You know, if you're not asking yourself that, and I would even challenge you, what you said sounded really great to me or to Mikey, because we're in this space. But if I really did meet you out on the street and I didn't know Web3, most of what you said would not have made sense to me other than comic books, right? And so think about that too, because learning how to articulate what you do easily, simply make it easy digestible is a much faster way to get people to on board and build a community around, right? Because that's the cause. That's what people want to stand behind. So anyway, just a thought there. But I like your second run on it. That was good.
And it's something, remember, built over time. Listen, when Maddie and I created this company, Midlife, we started with 3 paragraphs. We got 3 paragraphs down to 1 sentence, which is bringing back the lost art of genuine human connection. That shit's
I love that.
difficult, right? But we got there from 3 paragraphs in months of conversation, not just a week, months over time. So it's a tough task, and you did a pretty darn good job there, even after some massaging. But continue to work on that, man, because it is a very powerful tool to have, and I don't think many people utilize it like they should. So, fantastic job, man. So let's talk about mint date, mint price, details that you can share right now. And then after that, we'd love to hear kind of what the next year of your life in Web3 brings you.
Okay, so mint date is not yet formally announced, but it's going to be in about a month. Mint price, again, due to the massive fluctuations in ETH at the moment, is not yet announced, but it's going to be affordable. It won't be a degen mint, but it won't be like something crazy like 1 ETH mint price or something crazy like that. And I don't remember what the third question was.
Just timing and mint price. And then the third question is, what does the next year look like for Metalancers and Christian?
So the next year is basically just building the app, releasing it, and then adding as many new features as possible, as fast as possible, based on feedback from our users. While also rewarding our holders through airdrops and stuff. I feel like the next year for me, one thing that I would really, really want to do, if everything goes well, is host an event for our holders at an NFT conference, hopefully NFT New York City. I find that these events really bring the community together if done right. But at the same time, as a brand, you sort of have to be careful to not spend a significant amount of money on it. It could even be a meetup, like informally at a restaurant or something, but I would really, really want to meet our holders. That's the thing I wish for the most in the next year.
Yeah. No, that's great, man. Maddie,
Let
go
me
ahead.
ask a couple. Yeah, because Mikey went into kind of the future, but I want to actually rewind a little bit. Let's talk right now, right?
Yeah.
So again, you're building an app to help people read comic books digitally.
Yes.
One thing I never heard out of all of this in your background, law degree, finance, Web3, Bitcoin, learning how to code, you never mentioned comic books. So
Correct.
why comic books? What drew you to this?
Well, firstly, when I mentioned that I used to read a lot of books, that includes comic books as well.
Right.
But more than that, it's for me, it started as books, and the comic book aspect of it is sort of it's my idea as well. But between the two of us, between me and Tudor, the one who's most obsessed with comic books and reads them religiously for like the past 20 years, at least an hour a day, is definitely him. I am into comic books. I've read a lot, especially animes. I'm pretty big. Well, not animes, manga. But yeah, I get the names confused because anime is such like a common term these days.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's pretty much the story.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So
there's
then,
probably more to it.
so then, and this is, I'm fascinated by this. So these questions I'm asking, by the way, if the answer is I don't know, or that's a good question, that's totally fine. So zero pressure. I'm
Okay.
just fascinated because I love, business systems, formulating businesses, business concepts. So we're in a hyper niche market with NFTs, right?
Yeah.
I mean, of the entire investment world, you got into finance, of all the stuff out there, NFTs is very small, right?
Yes.
Now, of the people who are readers, right, which is already a dwindling number of people, sadly, right?
Yeah.
Comic book readers are very small. So you have two of these niches kind of intersecting, which can be fantastic, right, from a business strategy point, or it can be very, very difficult to essentially logistically navigate. What is your thought about that? How are you finding people who not only like NFTs but also like comics or vice versa? What's your strategy around that? Because I feel like you could spend a lot of time marketing to people who just aren't into comics or aren't into NFTs. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
What's your
we look
strategy
at
around that?
like our market research and stuff.
Sure.
So there's a huge overlap between people. So okay, firstly, let me address your point with the dwindling number of comic book readers. It's
Yeah.
true. Compared to, I don't know, like 30 years ago, it's much lower. But over the past 3 years, there's been a significant increase in the amount of people that regularly read comic books.
Okay.
So it's sort of the perfect time for this. Companies such as Webtoons and Tapas have been growing at an exponential rate over the past few years. Really, really
Okay.
incredible growth. And based on our market research, like going into communities, doing polls and stuff, a large percentage of people that buy into NFTs are also into comic books, which
Okay.
is not that weird if you think about it, because what are NFTs fundamentally? Digital collectibles. At least to me, that's what an NFT is. It's a collectible that you own on chain and it's digital. And what are many comic book lovers into? Physical merch and physical collectibles. That's why people pay
Sure.
exorbitant amounts of money for collectibles based on comic book characters.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So it sort of makes sense that there's a significant overlap between the people that buy into NFTs, especially those that buy them more for the art rather than for the hype and profit, and people that read comic books and consume this sort of content. And another thing that I think is very important to mention, we are doing a lot of things in order to actually, for the average user, abstract from the fact that we are at the core an NFT project. Like, of course, we're always going to take care of our holders, and they will be our top priority. But at the same time, the majority of people don't want to hear the words NFT, Web3. They think it's complicated. They're not
For
there
sure.
yet. Mainstream adoption is unfortunately not there yet. So that's why we're going the route of Polygon custodial wallets, because then we don't have to ask anyone to create a wallet, purchase episodes in crypto, stuff like that. More so, it wouldn't even be allowed on the App Store because Apple doesn't allow that sort of apps. They want everything to go through their in-app purchases, where you just double tap your power button, Face ID takes it from your Apple account. They take a 30% cut. Yeah. So
Okay.
with the app, we aren't even necessarily targeting this niche overlap between NFT buyers and comic book readers. It can just be targeted towards comic book readers. However, of course,
There you
marketing
go.
for the NFT collection is different. We're marketing it for that niche, but at the same time, it's only a 10. Well, I say only a 10,000 piece collection. That's a big collection in terms of NFTs, but as an amount of users for a company, that's not a large amount. Most
Sure.
companies are not profitable when they have 10,000 users. To achieve that, they need way more. So yeah,
Okay.
we sort of regard these 10,000 people who are going to buy into it as our
Yeah.
as the holders of the key to this ecosystem, and the rest of the people who will use the app. I'm sure that at one point in the future, when mainstream adoption becomes useful, that cool little feature we hide in there, which is export private key, and then you actually own each episode in that wallet, and you get to take it away with you and import it to whatever tool there may be. Because I think that there will be competitors who will
Sure.
allow you to import the wallet that we create for you and read all of the stuff on their UI, because it's decentralized. That's the beauty of it. You truly have to do things better than the others to keep your users there, because otherwise it's very easy for them to leave. They're not locked into the ecosystem, and this can be a blessing
Yeah.
and a curse. I consider it a blessing, because
Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
this sort of decentralized way of thinking, and that's our lore as well. Our story is these Metalancers have been scattered across the universe, after the centralizers took over, and they were spread over 8 planets. And the centralizers are sort of a metaphor for big exchanges, big banks. And it's becoming even more relevant recently, our story with like Silicon Valley Bank collapsing, what else? FTX collapsing, a lot of this stuff. And the Metalancers sort of fight for decentralization. And they spread the message, the hidden revelation from the planet of Buterin, which comes from Vitalik Buterin. They spread it across the universe, teaching others the way of decentralization. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So okay. I think I'm following more. This is good. So what you're saying is you're trying to really market to people who like to read comic books. You're specifically avoiding a lot of the NFT jargon because you recognize that there's some quick aversions or at least opinions when it comes to that. So let me ask you this. You were talking about a event potentially at NFT NYC. What's the largest gathering, or what's the event that people who read comic books, what's an event that most of them are going to be at?
Comic-Con.
Are you guys planning to be there?
Yes, we are. We're already planning to be at Comic-Cons in Europe this year. We wanted to attend even before launching the project, but it wasn't an efficient use of our time, as we need to focus all our time and resources on getting market ready to mint these NFTs and build this product.
No, that's great. I think that's going to give you a tremendous amount of insight, and it makes me happy to hear you're doing both. Right. It sounds like you're being consistent then with what you're going after. That's smart. Got to know your audience.
And our artist as well. So this is an example of one of our NFTs.
Well, got it up on screen. Been up the whole time.
Yeah.
I actually didn't print these for this podcast. I just have them like as things I have around my house because I like them so much. She's a comic book artist. She was recently in New York. She got signed to launch her own comic book series with one of the biggest comic book publishing houses in the US.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, due to the way her contract works, I cannot disclose which publishing house this was or what her name is, but just from the quality of the art and the comic book style art that we have on Twitter and everywhere, I think it's pretty clear.
Yeah, that's awesome,
that
man.
Up.
And
that's good.
Live in San Diego, which is one of the biggest Comic-Con conventions in the world. So if you do come down this way, I'll be around and we have a chance to meet up in real life as well.
Yeah, that would be awesome to do like a follow-up podcast in real life.
Yeah, we could do it live from Comic-Con. I got a Roadcaster digital podcast traveling unit. Maddie, go ahead.
No, that was it. I just wanted to kind of go through that journey with you thought process wise, because, it's interesting hearing somebody with an NFT project who recognizes you can't say NFT to attract new users into the space. You're going to be able to talk to people within the space, people like Mikey and I, and we can appreciate what you're doing. But to my point on the elevator pitch, being more directed towards a person who's not very Web3 competent, or at least grounded, is probably even stronger now, right? Because you're going to have to give that pitch way more to people at Comic-Con than you are to people at NFT NYC, right?
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
So, at the end of the day, what it really sounds like is you guys have found a cooler way to get people to be able to read their comic books online and not spend as much money, and that benefits both the artist and the end user. And I think that that's really a message to be sending, which I'm sure you're working through at this point.
That's a really nice way to put it in just a few sentences. Yeah, thank you for that.
Sure.
If you guys don't have any follow-up questions, I'd love to dive deeper into it was one of the things you just mentioned, but a few more aspects of the project as well.
Sure.
Like,
let's do it.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Awesome. So I started off by saying this is our main utility. There's a secondary utility as well, which is much more focused towards the Web3 people, and it's almost not at all focused on the app aspect of things. At the moment, if you want to license an NFT, it's a very complex process, there's no set legal contracts, there's no platform, there's no price transparency. You sort of are just guessing the price and pitching it to people. And this is preventing big brands from licensing NFTs. So what we are also building is a website, not a mobile app, where you can license your NFTs, or so you can either be the licensor or the licensee, of course, on both sides of the table. And what this is going to do, firstly, it's going to enable price transparency and price discovery for NFT licensing, which is huge. It basically tells you the value of the actual IP behind your NFT. This does not exist at the moment. Secondly, it's going to reduce security risks in the space. I feel like every few weeks you see a Bored Ape, an Azuki, something getting drained from someone's wallets because they clicked a link to license their NFT to someone. It's a very common scam with these blue chips. And with our platform, it's going to be all escrow contracts in terms of like the smart and on-chain side of things. And thirdly, it's going to be simple. You're going to have some boxes that you tick, which includes licensing for this, this, and this. And then you have sort of a standard contract template. You digitally sign it with like your wallet, and that's it. And the way this ties in with the comic books and stuff is, I really love this part. Basically, I can be an up and coming comic book artist publishing his own sort of series on the Metalancer app, but maybe I want to get some attention from the Azuki community. This is sort of forward thinking once NFTs become more mainstream. And what am I going to do? I'm an up and coming artist. I'm dedicating all my money into hiring an editor and copywriter for this. I don't have money to buy a $16,000 NFT. So I'm going to go to this website. I'm going to license it. And then I'm going to include an Azuki character, which is like exactly manga/anime style art. And I'm just using Azuki as an example because it's a blue chip, and that way it can't be seen like I'm endorsing any specific project because anybody knows Azuki in the space. They can then license that Azuki and integrate that character, give it its own story, its own backstory into the comic book series that they're building. And therefore, overnight, they attract everyone in the Azuki community who is interested in reading comic books. And I think that's something huge for the space, because every project is like, oh, you get the IP, we're building IP, oh, your IP is valuable. Well, is it? Like, there needs to be a marketplace where you can actually see the value of this IP, see it on brands, see it in stories. Webtoons actually offers a very interesting marketing strategy for brands. They can basically get in touch with Webtoons, and they can be like, hey, I need a comic book creator to integrate my product and add it as sort of product placement into their comic book strips. And it works. Brands are interested in this. So I don't see why NFT brands would not be interested in this sort of placement. It's beneficial for both the NFT collection and for the artist.
Yeah.
And the collections has been resoundingly positive. Like a lot of collections are interested in even granting a free license with like an NFT from their treasury for potential comic book artists to get started and make a comic book series based on their characters, because why wouldn't they?
Yeah. And what you said is really interesting to me, though, because now you have fundamentally two businesses. You're going to be building a licensing platform, which is a massive opportunity attached to the comic book, which is another really interesting opportunity because you're going to be able to really utilize those IPs in an interesting way. And I think in essence is at the heart of what you're doing, correct?
That's correct. And we won't be building these simultaneously. So first we're going to be launching the comic book platform. Then while part of the team is pushing new features, optimizations and stuff, they're also going to be working on the NFT licensing platform. It's also very helpful that we have a bunch of developers. Like I told you, our co-founder is Tudor. He also owns Hive, the Web3 job marketplace. And we also have a development agency in-house. And these sort of three companies are intertwined but separate as legal entities. So it allows me to have a pool of developers that are currently engaged in other projects for clients, but they know that when we need to start development work intensely for Metalancer, they're going to shift to working for Metalancer. So it's that's very helpful in knowing what we can realistically deliver, and it saves us the friction of having to hire people after mint.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a really good idea. And now that you've dived a little deeper into it, thanks, Maddie, for asking those great questions. It's definitely coming together more. Maddie, any other thoughts there?
I mean, my initial thought is going to be, I think that I love the idea, right? The idea what you were talking about with the licensing and the IPs, and like, hey, if an artist can get one of these and then integrate one of those characters into a story or build lore around it, I'm sure there's a lot of minutia, you know what I mean, and legal issues. You're the one with the law degree that will probably eventually kind of come to light with that stuff. But the concept of it is definitely sound, and you've already demonstrated that because it does happen already today, right? It could be a character being used on a cereal box. I mean, the bottom line is this stuff happens all the time in traditional marketing.
Yeah.
It makes no sense that it can't happen here. So yeah, that's really cool, man. I like it.
I'm really glad to have a positive reaction from you guys, because you get to speak to so many people about their ideas and see upcoming projects. So your insight is definitely very appreciated by me and the rest of the team.
Sure.
Absolutely, man. And I mean, I would say to that point, we've seen tons of amazing ideas come through. And most of those have not come to fruition. So
Right.
you've got a long road ahead of you. And you know, you can't get discouraged, especially in a market like this. And you're going to have a lot of hurdles, but you know, that's why we build relationships like this one to help each other
Yeah.
along the way and along the journey, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be a long journey. But like I said in the beginning of the podcast, it's about the journey. And as long as you surround yourself with people who are dedicated to the project, who want to see it succeed, and they're on your team helping you along the way, I think you can face any adversity and overcome any sort of challenge that comes your way. Yeah.
Yeah, man.
Awesome.
The art as well. I want to like take a dive into the art. I'm not sure if that was like one of your next questions, but I
Yeah.
literally have it in front of me and I wanted to talk about it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
So with this art, I was having a discussion with our creative director today. Very talented person. Has been a good friend of Tudor for many, many years. And the way he described it, we're currently designing a creative journey about how everything came to be with the art, with the lore, with everything. And I was like, okay, can we maybe get this done by the time that I go on this podcast so I can share it as a graphic? And he's like, do you think I spent a year designing these, perfecting them, making every trait perfect? I have carried this baby inside of me for over a year, and you want me to rush it? No. And I love his approach. Like, it's very art centric, it's very perfectionist, very minimalist, and it's sort of making no compromise on the art, even like on a creative journey, not on the actual NFT art. It was like, absolutely not. We cannot rush this. You want this to be good. You want this to be the top quality. It cannot be done in time for the podcast you're doing tonight. And there's two takeaways from this. First, he is obsessed with the art, as is the entire team, because there has been a tremendous amount of effort going into it. We have both females and males. We have different traits entirely for both the females and the males. So this is basically 2 collections in one. Everything is hand drawn by our illustrator. There's like a ton of files in our Google Drive with just inspiration, watching fashion shows, watching movies, watching a bunch of random things, and drawing inspiration from literally so many sources, all to get focused on these specific traits, not to mention the hundreds of traits that have been completely erased and we are not including in the final collection. So that's the first takeaway from this. The second takeaway is surround yourself with people who believe in your vision, but aren't afraid to say no if you have an idea that's not good. Because if you surround yourself with yes men, you get sucked into this like sort of ultra positive environment where everything you say as a founder is like met with, oh my God, that's an awesome idea. Let's do it. Let's do it. Let's do it. And then 6 months down the line, the company is hemorrhaging money. None of your ideas are going anywhere. And you realize that all the people were just agreeing with you because they were yes men. You have to have people that are passionate but aren't afraid to come up to you and say, hey, this is a horrible idea. We are definitely not supposed to do this right now. It's sort of, I don't know if you've watched Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's how Gavin Belson surrounded himself with yes people, and that led to his downfall. Like his spiritual guru that was bringing him elephants and stuff on Hooley campus. You don't want that sort of environment and vibe.
Yeah, no, it's a fantastic analogy, and it's a great insight into how to build effectively too. So good little nugget there. Anything else about the artwork or the project that you want to share?
Well, let me think if I'm going through everything right now. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Oh, there was one more thing. You mentioned that you like this approach about abstracting from like the NFT and the buzzwords for the general public.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to say I can't take full credit for the idea. This actually came. So I've been exploring this concept for a while, but then I saw Reddit avatars. Reddit absolutely hates NFTs from the bottom of their heart. But they love the digital collectibles, these cute little avatars that are them and they're digital and they own them. But NFTs are hated. And I was like, okay, this doesn't add up. And people just associate the buzzword NFT, Web3 with grifters, scams, uncertainty, complex wallet setup. And you want to abstract from that. And Reddit did it very, very well. Another project that is doing it very well right now is Pudgy Penguins on Instagram.
Yep.
I'm not sure if you know or follow them, but they're at like 500,000 followers. And each post gets easily over 10K likes. That sort of engagement is unparalleled in the Web3 space. Like even Yuga Labs, when they announce like an other side land sale or whatever, they're probably getting about this amount of likes and engagement on Twitter, whereas Pudgy Penguins is getting double that every day on 3 different posts. Because at the end of the day, they're these cute penguins who are giving you positive, uplifting messages. And that's what people want. They don't want to know that these are NFTs. They'll find out when the time is right. But for now, you just got to make people love what you are building and what you are creating.
Fantastic point. Fantastic point.
Yeah. No, I like that, man. That's really good. And I think that really goes to what we talk about when this whole phenomenon got started. The big question was, when are the big dogs going to come in here and do it? Right. When Disney decides to do this, they've already created a love for these characters that they've built, right? These worlds that they've built, right? Or Star Wars, or you take video game, even like Call of Duty or something like that. There's just so many people that love it. They could bring that, and they would already have an audience, right? But to your point, if you have to create it, what Pudgy Penguins is doing is just that. They're making people fall in love with these characters, and then and they don't even know yet that, wait, there's like an IP attached to this. And I think that that's
Yeah.
going to be really cool.
Yeah, and imagine when these people find out that these are NFTs and it's now easy to buy NFTs. Scams have been reduced, the space has matured, and suddenly their favorite penguin that they love and have been getting positive messages from for the past 2 years is available for sale for like, I don't know, whatever amount of money or ETH that it may be. I'm sure someone will be tempted.
Yeah. Well, of course. And you know, it's like anything else, man. I mean, when the risk is high, it's easy to be cautious, right? And then all of a sudden everybody's doing it and they'll tell you it was their idea in the first place. You know what I mean? That's just how the world works. And that's how entrepreneurship works, right? It's been that way since the beginning. And I think we're just seeing people who are finding new and creative ways to create the feeling you had when you walked into that Apple store and picked up that iPod Touch. Do you know what I'm saying? How do you
Absolutely.
create magic? And you have to be thinking that way at all times in whatever space you're in. And I think that's the goal I think we're all trying to get to, is how can we put magic in people's hands? Because once you do, they don't care about the details.
Right. Exactly. And that is the absolute, moment that everything shifts. It's the Apple moment. It's such a easy one for everybody to relate to. They created the smartphone market as what it is today, and that will happen with NFTs. The question is who will eventually do it. But people like us that are continuing to talk to move things forward, help get to that point where it culminates in mass adoption. So we're part of the cause.
Yeah.
Just
All
to
right,
add
man.
to what you said,
Oh,
Matt,
go ahead.
sorry for butting in here.
No.
You said once you put magic in people's hands, the details don't matter. And I think what you said is very true in a way. I think that the magic that people see in their hands is the culmination and the combined effect of all the details that the people behind are paying attention to. Because what makes an Apple store magical, even the tilting of the screen to 45 degrees so you can see it properly, makes you touch it and then you have a physical connection with the device. I'm not sure if you know this about Apple stores. All screens are, yeah. And with Disney as well, do you know what's magical for children in Disney? They have certain things that are set to specific heights and then covered. And basically the children can see this magical vision. And like these characters, and they're like, Mom, look, Mickey Mouse. And the mom is like, wait, where? I can't see him. And they're like, right there. How can you not see him? And that's the magic. It's exactly those details that the people don't realize, but that's what makes it magical.
Yeah.
And it's the same with an NFT project. You've got to pay so much attention to the details. Like with this art, there's so much attention to the details, but the majority of people are never going to notice that. And that's okay, because they're just going to think it's cool art, but they'll never know the amount of work that went into it. That's what you want to see.
Yeah, and that's what Matt was getting at. That exact point is there's so much painstaking detail that gets into it. The user doesn't recognize it; they just see magic, right?
Yep.
So
the user didn't buy the iPhone because they put it at 45 degrees or paid some research study to know to put it at 45 degrees. They bought it because they touched it and they liked it.
Yeah.
And that's, as an entrepreneur, you always have to step back and it's very easy to get caught up on our side of the fence. What do you mean you don't see the value in this? Look at all these things I did for you. They don't care. They pick it up and it feel amazing. If the answer is yes, they buy it. That's at the end of the day. I used to try to reason with people who would buy a thing at Starbucks for $8. I'm like, do you understand that this cost them 38 cents?
Yeah.
Maybe another 50 cents in packaging and whatnot. Like, why would you spend $8 on it? At the end of the day, they sold a product that somebody goes to that drive-through. And have you seen the happiness on people's faces when they get their Starbucks? At the end of the day, that's it. You know what I mean? You can't get stuck on our side of the fence and think, well, how does that even make sense as a business model? Listen, man, they get that drink in their hand and they feel good about life. You sell that, you're going to have raving fans. And that's really what you have to remember sometimes, and step back and be like, what's the end user really getting here? Disney has mastered that. Apple has mastered that. And that's the name of the game.
So this has been a fantastic conversation. Believe it or not, we're almost at an hour and 45 minutes. Lots of wealth of knowledge. You've been rocking and rolling. We do have one closing question. It's a softball. Don't be too afraid. Uh, so before that, any closing comments on Metalancers, the futures that you want to share with us?
No, I think we're gonna link up in a year from now, hopefully in person, and we're gonna look back at this podcast and think, "Wow, how far everything has come."
Yep.
Look at Metalancer now, and that's what I really hope from the bottom of my heart that happens.
I hope it's at San Diego Comic-Con, man, because it would be
Yeah,
a
dog.
ton of fun. Yeah, no, I love that. And so to kind of wind it down, we like to ask this question and kind of get feedback from ourselves and just your thoughts in general. You've seen hundreds of Twitter spaces, probably been a part of 100 Twitter spaces. How do you think your time on midlife crisis went today compared to other things that you've experienced in the Web3 space?
I prefer this podcast style over any of the other spaces that I have been on, because you guys dive so deep into like the origin story of the founder or the people that you're talking to, and nobody else is doing that. I feel like that's such a niche thing to ask questions about. And when you think that we spend an hour just on episode 1, 2, and 3, I was like, are we going to get into the project? Like, I was enjoying talking, but I was like, is there going to be enough time for the project? And it turns out there is enough time to talk both about the project, about your personal life, about your goals, your childhood. And I really think this is needed in this space. Like you believe in that. I forgot what the exact sentence was, but it was like your mission statement. If you could repeat that.
To bring back the
Sure.
lost art of genuine human connection, my friend.
Exactly. And in a space where everything is anonymized and resumed to 140 character tweets, nobody is going into this much detail about people's lives. And I really enjoyed it.
Awesome, man. And we appreciate that because that is exactly what we're going for. So, like we've said multiple times, and we just talked about, that is what you call a product market fit, right? So now it's just continuing to get the word out, the content out, and hopefully continuing to build our following like we do, because people appreciate that angle and aspect. So that means the world to us that that's what you felt, and that's the feedback that you had, man. Really appreciate it. And
Yeah, and I really appreciate the chance to be on here.
absolutely.
Really got connected and that we were able to have this space. It's been an awesome experience.
Thanks, man.
Yeah,
and
man,
with
thank
that,
you.
I will let Matt say his closing comments. I'll say mine, and we'll call it a day.
Absolutely. Yeah, man. This has been a pleasure. Thanks so much for taking the time to talk with us. Um, you know, I love what you said at the end there. Thank you for boiling it down to and reconnecting back to our purpose and our statement, right? That lost art of human connection matters, right? Because behind these projects are people, and people are interesting. And you said yourself that a product led you to looking up to Steve Jobs as a role model, right?
Yeah.
And once you realized who he was, right? If he had said, "Hey Christian, I'm coming out with a new product," and I know he's obviously not here anymore, but if he was, and guess what? All of a sudden he sent out a tweet tomorrow saying we're coming out with a new product, you would be interested. And you don't even know anything about the product. You just know about Steve, right? And that's what it is we're trying to bring is wait a second. We realized if we can learn the people behind these projects, and if there's a congruency there, then that's a lot more interesting than just focusing on the project itself. They're interesting. The projects are interesting, just like the iPods and the Apple products are interesting. But the person behind it, there's something fascinating about that. So thanks for taking that journey with us. Obviously, like Mike said in the beginning, man, you got a law degree, you've gone through some finance work. At the end of the day, you're a hard worker. You go after your goals. Even when COVID made things difficult, you still pursued it. And not only that, you thrived with the pro bono society that you're still checking up on. you have a heart for helping people, hence the whole pro bono society concept in the first place. And so this is something that matters to you. And I think that that shows, man, you're passionate about it. I think that that's an exciting thing. I really think it's a unique space to be in. Like I said, it's hyper niche, but I think if you can capitalize on that, man, you can really, really make an impact there and help bring a lot of Web 2 people into a Web 3 mindset. And they may not even know it yet. And that's what's really, really cool. So I wish you the best. I do want to follow up with you and see how things are moving forward. And like Mikey always says, man, this is just the beginning of a friendship. So thanks for taking the time.
Thank you.
Yeah, Matt. No, Matt always nails the closing comments. You know, adding on, just really appreciative of you opening up. I think, like I said, episode 1 was not the greatest grade in the beginning, but then you learned very quickly and started really sharing some great details about your mindset and things that you've learned, and really good insight into Web3 as well. And then once we dove deeper into your project, I really got a sense of understanding, and there is massive potential there. I think, like Maddie and I were saying, and we'll use this content to help you out as well, is continuing to hone that message down into a very concise way of how you're. And I think it's very important to talk, like you said, broader, right? This is really a solution and a product and a company that is bridging those two. And everyone says that. You hear this all the time in the space. We're going to bridge Web 2 and Web 3. But then you ask them how you're going to do it, and there's a lot of crickets, right? You have a tangible vehicle and way to do that. And that is one of, I think, your superpowers, man, especially in a world, like you said, where comics are just a direct natural evolution into the NFT space. So if you can get that Web 2 culture in without saying NFT, it's going to be a pretty interesting thing. Hope to see you at San Diego Comic-Con next year, man. And to reiterate, Matt, you know, what we do here is build friends. And we have built a really cool network to continue to grow in the space and help each other out. And I can't wait to do that with you, man. So thank you very much for your time, because I think that's the number one valuable thing that we all have is time. So I appreciate it, man.
Yeah.
Thanks, man. So with that being said, we're calling it a day. Midlife crisis. We just tore it down with Metalancers, learned a ton about comics, life, and Web3. We cannot wait to see you next week. Midlife crisis is out.